Katz and Cosby, entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Boy, this looks like a bombshell, guys. Joining us now is the founder of Real America Vote and New York Citizens Audit. And it appears that there could be a chance that there were fraudulent votes cast in the New York City mayoral. That's one of the allegations, one of the things looking into. And the big question is, what does that mean about the election of Mayor Zoran Mondani? Well, to describe what she has uncovered is Marley Hornik. Again, she's founder of Real America Vote and New York Citizens Audit. What did you discover? Because you went through a whole bunch, I think about 1 million, right, of the votes.
Well, thank you so much for having me on to talk about this critical study. We discovered, because you see, the New York City and the New York State boards of elections are required under the first law we ever passed, the United States Constitution, to qualify every voter according to law. So our audit just asked a question: did they qualify the voters before registering them and counting their votes? And we discovered, using synthetic identity fraud prevention tools, commercial tools, we discovered that 7% of the voters don't exist. 6% of the voters have fake Social Security numbers, according to the SSA website, and 10% of the voters did not live in New York City anytime during 2025. So that's 23% of the vote is flagrantly unqualified, which is a total failure. It's a failure of the New York City and the New York State boards of elections to uphold a simple promise ratified in 1789. I call it the original SAVE Act.
Now, Marla, I have a whole bunch of questions for you. First question is, why did you get access to this? Is this something that other people can get access to? And does the Board of Election know this?
Well, we just asked the Board of Elections through the legal process for copies of the voter rolls and the voter history. So we used their official records. We used the way that they define the voters, the names, the dates of birth, and the voting addresses. And then we work with qualified personnel who look these up in these fraud prevention tools. It's what banks use to do know your customer studies, right? So this is like a know your voter. And those tools are restricted to people who are licensed. So I didn't look at the actual records. The company we worked with, they looked at the records. We did deep verification on our questions. Did they exist? Did they have a real Social Security number? And did they live in New York City? Simple. So that's how we found this out.
And what about the reaction to this? Does the Board of Elections know? What about some of the candidates?
Well, where we brought it immediately, because I've been working for over a year with John Sarcone, a true patriot, the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of New York. And that's where I brought every single piece of this data. Actually, New York Citizens Audit has been for 5 years asking the boards of elections to fix these problems. And they retaliated against us. They investigated us under the KKK Act with Letitia James. That was 2 years lost on this issue. So at the point, I just turned it all over for investigation and potential prosecution.
So are you saying that the U.S. Attorney in the Northern District has this?
Exactly. Yep. And the Albany FBI office. And you have to remember why they have jurisdiction was because every single ballot for the New York City mayoral election was also a ballot for the statewide ballot initiative, Proposition 1. So every vote counted in New York City was also counted in Albany by the New York State Board of Elections. And it's a fraud. They're not allowed to count votes from voters they haven't qualified. It's very simple.
Yeah.
Was there any federal people running at the same time so it could become a federal item?
Well, there were not federal candidates on the ballot, but there's two ways that it is a federal item, John, and I appreciate that question. That's very astute. First of all, when the right to vote, which is defined by Congress to include the right to have your vote counted in the appropriate totals of votes cast, when that is infringed upon in any way, it's a federal issue. And second of all, because there was a statewide ballot initiative, you also get immediate access or immediate justice under the Voting Rights Act, because that's part of the specific language in that statute.
Let's go to Craig Eaton here.
Issue.
I was the Brooklyn chairman.
You got to turn your mic on.
I was the Brooklyn chairman here for 12, 13 years, and we would see every cycle, whether it was city or state, federal elections. We saw fraud in the voting booths, in the polls. We have dead people voting every year, and some dead people have voted for more than 5 or 6 years. There was a lawsuit that was filed. There was an investigation last year by the feds and the Brooklyn district attorney because of all the fraud in Brooklyn in a city council race. Something needs to be done, and the first thing I think we need to do is we need to get photo ID. You need photo ID before you vote.
Right. Well, the issue is if they don't want to use photo ID, if they want to take everyone's word for it at the polls, then they go to jail, because that's not an effective means of qualifying voters. It doesn't meet the standard they promised they would do in the United States Constitution. Sentence number 2, literally the first thing the founders put in when they were writing this out with a quill pen, right? So I agree. There's tons of fraud. We always hear the stories. You've seen the stories. This makes it very, very simple, because that kind of stuff is really hard to prove. It's really hard to prosecute. It's hard to figure out who was behind it. But this is very simple. New York State and these top level election officials are responsible to that guarantee, and they failed. And that's a crime in this country.
Marty, I got to ask some obvious question. I'm not an attorney, so I'm just asking this as a layperson. When I hear this, the question is, can there be any repercussions? Because if indeed, and then the other question is, what about the other 1.2 million? What about those? I mean, I would assume, do you have access to the rest of them? Because maybe this is the tip of the iceberg. And then can there be anything retroactive? I mean, if it turns out that X amount of people should not have voted, is there a repercussion?
Right. There are repercussions, Rita. And multiple times in our history, about at least 5 times, the United States Supreme Court has upheld criminal conviction for election officials who certified false tallies. So that's actually the method. And think about it for a second. In life, there's 2 ways to come by things. You can work for them or you can steal them. And the only way to keep people from stealing is to make it more painful than working. And that's why the law works this way. The United States guarantees the sovereignty of the citizens over the law. Period. End of story.
Hey, Marley,
can I election officials?
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Michael Cohen.
Hey, Marley, can I just ask you a quick question? When we were talking about federal, I apologize. I thought you were finished. But when we go back to federal, can we not turn around and maybe think a little bit out of the box? What if hypothetically people voted by mail? Doesn't that turn it into a federal issue?
It's already a federal issue when the state doesn't qualify the voters. So it doesn't matter how the ballot comes in. If they don't know that ballot came from a qualified voter, then accepting that ballot and counting it is fraud.
Is that postal fraud?
Which is federal.
No, it's election misconduct.
Craig Eaton, you're a lawyer.
I mean, mailing a fraudulent ballot. I mean, people were getting ballots mailed to them for people who died years ago, and they were filling out those ballots and then mailing those ballots in. I mean, that could be a federal offense.
That's a separate fraud.
Yeah, that's a separate fraud.
That's a separate fraud from what Marley is talking about.
So
exactly.
let me ask you,
voter fraud. That's what we call voter fraud.
How do we prove? All right, 2 things. I'm going back to one other thing. Did the Board of Elections, did they know? Do we have proof somewhere that somebody knew they were fraudulent? And is there any way to track down who committed the fraud?
Boy, are you good. You're an honorary lawyer.
I'm an honorary lawyer.
Boy, are you good.
I love it.
She got the A+ in the blue book.
The fraud was ultimately the certifier. Whoever signed the document that said this is all on the up and up, and we know everything that happened in this election, and this is unequivocally the will of the citizens of New York City has been registered here, right? So that's who committed the fraud. And whether or not it was willful doesn't matter, according to a lawsuit from 1888 that the Supreme Court settled, where they said for election officials, failure
All right,
to
Marley,
do a duty is a crime.
Marley, let me.
This is Judge Weinberg.
Let me broaden this discussion for you. I raised a question, which is, if this was a fraudulent election, how do we go to unwind it?
That's my question.
That's the $1 million.
I don't think you can. It's already been certified.
Certified with fraudulent documentation?
Right. If they, that's why she keeps going back, and I understand why you're going back, Marley, too, to why, if it was falsely certified.
It would have to be some kind of a...
No, but the question is, we don't have... Look, what we don't have is we don't have recall elections in New York City. So what I'm saying to you is there a legal remedy, a judicial remedy to unwind that past election if there's documentation there's a fraudulent election?
So, Marley, is there?
Well, it's a really good question. It's never been done before. It would be called a fraud ab initio, right, Judge? And that's how you would get it. But actually, the only way that I'm aware of under New York law to remove Mamdani is for the governor to do that.
That's correct.
Never happened.
That's correct.
Not
this governor.
Never happened.
Not this governor.
You know,
Right.
just maybe, if in fact that the fraud was demonstrated and she would be under so much pressure. It would be the fire under the backside, so significant.
I agree. If it can be clearly stated and shown.
You need a linkage between this illegal voting
and his
some
knowledge. Yeah, his knowledge of it.
That's right.
Exactly. I mean, regardless, there should be some sort of
whether it's his knowledge
change.
or his operatives.
Right.
Some knowledge.
But there should be, even on the broader level, to Marley's point, if indeed there were people illegally, as you're saying, that improperly, and people knew about it or turned a blind eye to it, how is that an honest election? I mean, it's not.
By definition, it's
right,
not.
and it still should come out. So,
Amen.
Marley, you got to get to the bottom of this with us. You've
posted.
started it.
Keep us posted. We want to know what happens in the next million votes.
Yeah. Marley,
what I want to say is,
are you going through the next 1.2? Are you going through the next 1.2?
That depends on, we have a 501c3. It's a tax deductible donation. That depends on people listening. Because
where can they find out, Marley? Where can they find out about you?
realamerica.vote. And I just want to add, I appreciate all the time. This is great. I just want to add that in order to have a fair election in 2026, we have to keep going. We can't let up, because that's the only way. People have to know, first of all, that their vote is going to matter, and then they have to turn out. But they're not going to turn out if they don't think it doesn't make a difference. So we have to fix this and make sure they know that, so that we get a fair election in 2026 and we can fix this beautiful state, and we can send real representatives to the United States Congress from New York with pride.
Bravo. Well, Marley, thank you
Marley.
so much. Thank you for sounding the alarm. That is awesome. You got to come back on again soon. That was great, Marley.
Great.
Very
Thank you.
powerful stuff.